Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Wrath of the Lich King. Today, the expansion that many consider the best ever released and the last true Blizzard game ever created. And in our last few videos in this series, we've been talking about PvE, and now we'll be shifting over and talking a little bit about PvP. Now, even if you're not hardcore about PvP, it can be helpful to know about each healer's abilities in PvP in the cases of World PvP, Battlegrounds, or even playing arenas. Now, like most of the videos so far in this series, this video will be a high-level comparison, and we'll do deep dives in future videos, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on those. Also, I want to add that we're going to be looking at patch 3.3.5a, the last patch of Wrath of the Lich King, since that's when the patch will likely get for a Wrath of the Lich King Classic release. Also, when it comes to the best in PvP, it also depends on the skill of the player, the season, and so many things, so please keep that in mind as we go through this. Now, for our rankings, we will consider the following: CC, or crowd control, damage mitigation / escapes, utility, as well as arena performance. So, with all of that said, let's go class by class and discussing the strengths and weaknesses, new abilities and talents, and then at the end we'll rank them. And so let's start with the Druid this time, because I typically save the Druid for last. I want to tell you a quick story. Back in Wrath of the Lich King, my brother was straight up MLG at Druid. He carried people to 1800 all the time for gold as a Druid in 2s. 1800, of course, unlocked your weapon, 1800 rating in arena. Weapon was very powerful. People always wanted that. And I think this story really showcases how powerful Resto Druids can be in PvP in Wrath of the Lich King. Let's talk a little bit about in terms of CC. Well, Druids are equipped with great CC. They've got Cyclone, which can be used to make an enemy immune to healing and mana regeneration if timed properly. Right before a big heal's going off, you can Cyclone them and they get immune to that. Otherwise, it's just a great outright CC. It's one of the most powerful CCs in the game because, well, it can't be dispelled and it has no cooldown, so it's very good. Of course, it does have diminishing returns like all CCs, though. Druids also have Entangling Roots, which can be very annoying for melee classes or even classes which can't dispel them and get caught in bad positioning. Nature's Grasp is basically an instant cast Entangling Roots that you cast on yourself. When someone hits you, then Entangling Roots get casted on them. That's another basically immobilize / CC, which helps Druids CC and escape from threats. And speaking of escapes, Druids are notoriously one of the best classes at escaping when being focused. They can cast their heals over time and then shift into a cat and sprint away, or shift into travel form for increased move speed, and if all else fails, they can switch into dire bear form and charge away, and also have that additional stamina and armor to help keep them alive. Now, when it comes to utility, Druids have Innervate, which restores a ton of mana, assuming it doesn't get dispelled or you get Cyclone during it, and Bark Skin, which is another great utility that can be used only on the Druid to keep themselves alive during high damage situations. Swift Mend is a nice instant cast heal that is very useful in those pressure situations as well. Now, rest your Druids in PvP typically get Insect Swarm from the balance tree, which is a instant cast 30-yard range ability which decreases a target's chance to hit by 3% and causes some nature damage over 12 seconds. This can be a powerful utility spell against melee, which is very, very nice. Typically in arena, Druids pair very well with Warlocks in the classic Hots Dots team, where you rely heavily on LOSing your opponent since you don't need to keep that line of sight to be actively healing or doing damage. Druids also pair well with Arms Warriors, which are quite powerful in PvP in Wrath of the Lich King, as well as Hunters and Rogues. Resto Druids, certainly one of the best PvP classes in Wrath of the Lich King. All right, let's move on to Disc Priests. Now, priests are powerhouses in Wrath of the Lich King. I can't even overstate that enough. The main strengths of Disc is that they're all about absorbing and lots of dispels, right? In Wrath of the Lich King, Disc Priests have pretty decent damage output as well, and so they're very, very viable in 2s and 3s. One of the main abilities that makes this possible is Penance. Now, Penance will deal either holy damage to an enemy or heal an ally, and it actually heals quite rapidly, so timing this takes skill, knowing when to use it. Of course, knowing to use it on an ally or an enemy if you're going for a kill, so very high skill level required to play Priest. Of course, Pain Suppression is incredible, 40% damage reduction, cooldown. Power Infusion, very, very useful, increasing spell casting speed by 20%. There's so many. There's Rapture, Grace, Divine Aegis, so many great talents that priests have. There's also Prayer of Mending, which of course you want to have that on. It's going to jump around and heal, which is kind of like passive healing almost. Not only that, but priests are the healer that can aggressively mana burn and actually completely a healer if given the chance. This actually also works very well on ret paladins. They are very sensitive when it comes to mana, even though ret paladins aren't that great in my opinion in PvP and Wrath of the Lich King. Disc priests are a pretty hard counter if you mana burn them. When it comes to CC, they have Psychic Scream, which is an AoE fear lasting 8 seconds. Of course, that can be interrupted if you damage those targets. But another really overlooked CC that priests have is Shackle Undead. You can use this to shackle Death Knight's ghouls, their gargoyles, and if a DK goes Lichborn, which is a talent that actually makes them undead, I recall you can also shackle them during that buff's duration. Very, very cool. Now, another overlooked CC that priests have is the ability to mind control. You can control a player and then jump them off a ledge or a cliff, which is great in BGs and Arena or even the open world. Now, I put their crowd control rating a little bit low after, I just explained all the things that they have, but realistically, getting a mind control off is not super likely to happen. And also, Shackle Undead, again, not super likely to happen, but you can probably get that off on a ghoul or a gargoyle, no problem. But getting that off on a DK while they're casting Lichborn, you have to be paying attention, and the DK can cancel it if they see it happening, but I digress. So another great utility of priests is Shadow Fiend. This is actually a very, very powerful utility which helps them get a ton of their mana back. It's super powerful, and of course they have tons of offensive cooldowns like Shadow Word Death, Holy Fire, Penance, like we mentioned. They can smite spam, and a lot of Disc Priest abilities can apply pressure, dispelling offensively, and of course Mass Dispel, which can get rid of a Paladin's Divine Shield or Bubble. Now, classes that grow great with a priest are rogues and mages, both in 2v2 and most importantly in 3v3, creating that rogue mage priest or RMP setup, which is extremely powerful. Priests can also partner with feral druids, which are quite good in Wrath of the Lich King, and even warriors and death knights. Overall, priest is a very powerful and very incredible PvP healer in Wrath of the Lich King. All right, moving on to the Resto Shaman. Now, Resto Shamans have a ton of abilities. They've got mobility and kiting through Ghost Wolf, Earthbind Totem, Frost Shock, which is a 50% slow. They've got great survivability because they actually carry a shield on their back. They've got mail armor. Stone Claw Totem actually protects your totems in Wrath of the Lich King by giving them a 1k shield, which is pretty nice, and it helps from just, ghouls or hunter pets, just getting rid of totems extremely fast. They've got Earth Shield, of course, tons of different amazing totems. They got a variety of different heals, whether that's a big cast heal or an instant heal. They got Healing Shield, Earth Living Weapon Healing Shield being Earth Shield. They've got a ton, and on top of all of that, they also have Purge, which is an offensive dispel, basically purges the enemy target, removing 2 beneficial magic effects. I cannot help but mention Bloodlust / Heroism. So you can see Shamans are probably quite good in 3v3 and 5v5, where you can get a lot of value out of that Bloodlust or Heroism. And they also have a very low cooldown interrupt called Wind Shear. Instantly blasts the target with a gust of wind, causing no damage, but interrupting spellcasting and preventing any spell in that school from being cast for 2 seconds. So this is pretty nice. On a 6-second cooldown, that means you can be interrupting spells all the time. It's pretty amazing, actually. And of course, Shamans got another new CC ability called Hex. Transform the enemy into a frog. While hexed, the target cannot attack or cast spells. Damage cause may interrupt the effect, last 30 seconds. This is pretty nice. It's actually a curse. So Shamans, if I hadn't mentioned it yet, there is a talent in the Resto tree that allows them to cleanse basically curses in Wrath of the Lich King. So Shamans can now decurse, which is quite amazing. And of course, Death Knights use a ton of diseases, and Shamans can get rid of those. Disease Cleansing Totem is quite good at that. They have excellent mana longevity in terms of Water Shield, Mana Spring, Mana Tide. So it's very, very, they have tons of options there. overall, Shaman's very, very good. Of course, teams that Shamans go well with would be the notorious comp RLS, which is also known as Rogue Lock Shaman. Very, very powerful arena team. Overall, rest of Shamans, very, very good overall in Wrath of the Lich King, but quite excellent in PvP as well. Okay, let's move on to the Holy Paladin. Played Holy Paladin a bunch in Wrath of the Lich King. I can tell you all about them. So when it comes to crowd control, Paladins are a bit lacking. The one main crowd control ability they have is Hammer of Justice. It has a 10-yard range, so if you're a bit careful with your positioning, you can really zone out a Paladin and not let him ever get this casted on you. The other CC that they have, which I hardly consider a CC, is Judgment of Justice. Basically, if you put on Seal of Justice and then judge that on an opponent, this will limit their movement speed so they can't go faster than normal. This will help if you're chasing them. It could particularly be good on Druids who get a lot of movement speed, or maybe a Rogue if you're chasing them and they're using Sprint. But overall, I never found it to be super great. It's not really a snare. It just makes it so you can't move faster than normal. When it comes to damage mitigation, of course, Paladins have the ultimate damage mitigation with Divine Protection. They also have Divine Shield, Hand of Protection, which is also BOP, right? Blessing of Protection. They changed Blessing to Hand in Wrath of the Lich King. They've got Hand of Freedom. This is actually quite a good ability. Clears you of any slows or snares, so very, very effective. Can be great with other melee classes. You've got Aura Mastery combined with Concentration Aura, which makes it so you can't be interrupted. This can be very, very useful in panic situations. And of course, Holy Shock can be used offensively or defensively for instant heals if you need it. When it comes to utility, they have things like Blessing of Sacrifice. They've got, of course, Hand of Freedom. They've got all their auras, which can be somewhat helpful. And they also have defensive dispels. I remember I was playing TSG back in Wrath of the Lich King as a Holy Paladin. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's pretty face roll. You can stomp through people. And I just remember I'd just spam Cleanse, as my melee DPS were going in, and the second that they would get sheeped or polymorphed or snared in any way, it would immediately be off them, because I would just be spamming that Dispel right at the beginning of the game. So defensive Dispel is incredibly good. Paladins can remove poisons, magics, poison magic, and I think that's it. There might be a third one, actually. Disease? Yeah, disease as well. They can't get rid of curses, but they're pretty good at everything else. Okay, TSG, like I was saying, that's a great arena team for Paladins. You can also run Paladin Warrior, Paladin DK and twos, that full plate team. Can be very powerful. I think the healer itself doesn't make the team, but just providing the utility really helps. Basically, these melee DPS are extremely powerful in PvP. Using Bryn Troll, I remember that weapon was crazy good. It had like a life steal effect on it. If your warrior had Bryn Troll and your DK had Bryn Troll, you were pretty much good to go. It was a good time. That never happened for me, though. My DPS didn't do it. Anyways, they have tons of abilities. I mean, Divine Illumination for mana efficiency. There's tons of stuff. Paladin, pretty good healer. But now we have to go and rank them. And this is what I came up with for our final tier ranking. For S tier, putting Resto, Shaman, and Druid, as well as Discipline Priest at S tier. They're all part of incredible teams. I think, Discipline Priest is incredibly strong. You see them in RMP. You see them in all sorts of scenarios just dominating. They can get rid of Pally Bubble. Rogues and mages got crazy CC to go with that. So that RMP has notoriously been a good comp. RLS has always been a great comp. Druids can basically be switched into many of these comps and do just as well. Incredible class. Very high skill caps for all these. Now, the reason I put Holy at A is because I felt like Holy didn't have as strong of a kit as the other healers. Now, I put him at A because it's still good. You can still easily get Gladiator as a Holy Paladin. There's comps that work really well with them. I just felt that they weren't as high of a skill ceiling. You didn't have a lot of CC. You didn't have too much to work with. And so I think as a class itself, I thought it was a little bit weaker. But anyways, that's my tier ranking. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Feel free to join our community in YouTube if you want to see more guides like this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And my name is Toyhouze, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.